Although they were biological sisters, they had different fathers. Her younger sister, the daughter of the Elven King, symbolized light and was the heroine of the story. But she, known as the child of the demonic Duke, was the story's villain, Casimir. With a mother but no father to raise her, she'd lived with her mother in the red light district since she was a child. Originally, her life was filled only with darkness, but at the age of 3, her sister's birth became her only source of light. Her sister was like an angel, illuminating her dark world. Who could have foreseen that at the age of 7, her mother would leave her nothing but a dilapidated house and pass away? To care for her sister, at the tender age of 7, she shouldered the burden of the family, working various jobs. But when she was 8, Harriet fell gravely ill. The only medicine that could save her life was incredibly expensive. To earn the money to save her sister, she took up the sword and became a mercenary, fighting relentlessly against hordes of magical beasts every day. Her swordsmanship reached its peak amidst the carnage. From then on, she was known as the Empire's Calamity. Unexpectedly, after a mission, Casimir slipped and hit her head. She unexpectedly awakened her memories from her past life. She had been an ordinary university student majoring in military science. This was the world of a novel she had once read. The precious little sister she had raised for 15 years was actually the heroine, the Elven King's daughter from the book, and she was the villain who tormented the heroine. This plot was a real headache. How could she ever hurt Harriet? When she woke up, she was in a hospital, unsure of who had brought her there. Suddenly, she sensed a surge of hostility. Turning around, she saw Harriet sitting quietly on a stool, glaring at her. "Oh my goodness, Harriet, what are you doing here?" Panicked, she draped the blanket over her sister. "It's so cold. What if you catch a cold?" Harriet, her cheeks puffed out, retorted, "You're still worried about me? Your sister is lying on the ground covered in blood, and you're worried about me." Casimir fidgeted with her fingers. "Isn't it because you're frail?" Afraid of worrying her sister, she had never told Harriet about her life as a mercenary. But this time, she had truly frightened Harriet. Harriet angrily threw the blanket to the floor. "Don't you think I worry about you too? Every time you go out, you come back injured. You come back clearly exhausted, but you still try to act strong. Please, sister, care about yourself a little. Didn't I tell you I don't need treatment for my illness?" Casimir was silent for a moment, wiping the tears from Harriet's eyes. Pulling her sister into a tight embrace, she said, "My sweet sister, I must save you." Awakening the memories of her past life was like a knock on the door to happiness, as long as she followed the original story. And in 2 months, Harriet was adopted by Duke Freya. They would be able to cure Harriet's illness, and she would meet those 4 outstanding potential husbands. It was due to an accident that the sisters, who had depended on each other for survival, embarked on different paths. 15-year-old Harriet collapsed on the road and was rescued and adopted by Duke Freya. Not only was her illness cured, but she also became a social superstar. At the same time, she was pursued by 4 outstanding men of the Empire. But as the heroine, she naturally couldn't avoid hardships. Casimir was one part of her sister's trials and also one of the potential future husbands. Her half-sister, Casimir, who lived in the red light district after accidentally learning about her true parentage, abandoned Harriet and sought out her biological father. Although the Duke mercifully acknowledged her, she suffered endless humiliation for being an illegitimate daughter. Her personality gradually became twisted as a result. 11 years later, the sisters reunited. Consumed by jealousy of her sister's grace and charm, she awakened as the villainous woman. This was supposed to be the ending. But now, one of them dotes on her sister, living only to protect her, while the other is obsessed with her sister. "Sister, I won't treat this illness. I only want you to be safe. Don't do such dangerous work anymore." Casimir agreed verbally, but she still intended to continue working as a mercenary. Now aware of the storyline, she needed to make plans early, clearing all obstacles for her sister. She put on the transformation ring she had worn for so long and changed into her mercenary attire as Casimir. She went to meet her client. The man's name was Ale, a renowned high priest. He was one of Harriet's 4 future potential suitors, yet he consistently supported Casimir through commissions. Casimir offered a greeting. "How are you doing, High Priest Ale?" The man frowned. "Didn't I tell you to call me something else?" Casimir hesitated for a moment, then addressed him by his name, Ale Dane. He rested his chin in his hand, looking pleased. Life in the temple is so boring. I count the days until I see you. Only you can make me happy. Casimir rolled her eyes. The man always said things she didn't understand. Fortunately, it didn't affect their transaction. However, during the exchange, the man casually brushed her fingers. When she didn't react, he smiled innocently. I just want to be closer to Casimir, although she had known him for 2 years. In her eyes, the famous high priest was just a naive fool with a lot of money. Because every transaction, he always insisted on overpaying. A full 1,000 jin. It was just enough to cover 1 dose of her sister's medicine. But the price of magical beasts fluctuated greatly. Casimir couldn't bear to see him being taken advantage of. She had explained the market to him many times, but it had no effect. This time, he had given her 10,000 jin. Even if she risked her life hunting magical beasts, it would take her half a year to earn that much. But Ale seemed unconcerned. This is what Casimir deserves. Although she needed the money, Casimir didn't hesitate to return the excess payment. I'm sorry, I can't accept this. She couldn't take it. It was her teacher's lesson and her personal creed. The man clenched his hands. Can't you just accept it? I really don't mean anything by it. Why can't you accept someone's pure goodwill? You used to be like this with others, too. But he didn't say those words aloud. Instead, after composing himself, he walked directly to Casimir and took her hand. I am sorry. I was presumptuous. I don't expect anything else. Just please, stop calling me High Priest Ale. That title, it makes it seem like there's nothing between us. Tears welled in his eyes. Casimir was filled with self-doubt. Not only had she been disrespectful to the high priest, she had actually made him cry. Ale patted her hand, soothing her. You must call me by my name from now on, Casimir. As a mercenary, she shouldn't have gotten too involved with her clients. But under Ale's gentle persistence, Casimir was charmed. Ale really is a good person, she thought. She had no idea that he had been scheming to get close to her for 2 years. Because years ago, Casimir had saved a young boy in the temple. That boy was none other than Ale. So, in a way, Ale saw her as his savior. And his meticulous plan was all to hold the goddess's hand. But at this point, Casimir was unaware that she had inadvertently become the white moonlight of her sister's harem. Casimir was dragging her weary body home when she stumbled upon a murder in progress. Despite being the villain in the story, Casimir's only desire was to protect her sister, the heroine, Haria. Not only was she willing to bloody her hands for Haria, but she was also determined to find her a suitable husband. Candidate number 1, the High Priest Ale, was a rich simpleton. Candidate number 2, the hapless crown prince, was a naive fool who needed rescuing. Ilias, disguised, was surrounded by a group of assassins on Casimir's route home. Casimir wasn't inclined to interfere, but the assassin's conversation revealed the man was a nobleman of high standing. If she didn't intervene, the man would surely die there. Just as Casimir resigned herself to her fate, closing her eyes and waiting for the inevitable, she remembered her master's teachings. She decided to act. Masked, Casimir descended like a warrior from the heavens. The assassins paused, momentarily stunned. Casimir's eyes scanned the young man with dark hair. He looked pathetic, like a damsel in distress. The assassins demanded to know who Casimir was. Casimir's reply was astonishing. I'm the Prince Charming here to rescue the princess. Ilias was dumbfounded. The assassins were speechless. Where had this idiot come from? Embarrassed, Casimir decided to end things quickly. She fumbled in her bag and pulled out a 2-meter-long steel pipe. Come on then, she challenged, striking a fighting pose. The assassins almost burst out laughing. They'd never seen anyone so ridiculous. But before they could finish laughing, Casimir swiftly took down their leader. The air thickened with silence. Seeing the sword saint's dough, cheese swirling around Casimir's pipe, no one could find it funny anymore. Why was the sword saint Casimir here? But she gave them no time to ponder. Unleashing her full power, she leaped and struck, taking down one with each move. A single sweep took out 2 more. The last remaining masked assassin trembled in the wind. Stay back. I'm almost a master swordsman, he blustered, his bravado far exceeding his skill. Casimir knocked him unconscious with a single blow. Ilias asked why she had helped him. Ilias's beauty was almost blinding. Soudainly, Casimir s'en à fin magica aura. She noticed a magic ring on Ilias's hand, concealing his true appearance. Ignoring his question, Casimir lifted Ilias's cloak to examine the wound on his abdomen. It wasn't fatal, thankfully, but we need to stop the bleeding. This will hurt, she warned, then punched him. Despite the agonizing pain, Ilias bit back a cry. Casimir offered a grunt of approval. Can you walk? Ilias was in too much pain to speak. Well then, Casimir sighed. I guess we do things my way. She loved no one but her sister. Yet, with the high priest practically throwing himself at her and the frail crown prince collapsing at her feet, she found herself in a predicament. She truly didn't want to save him, but she couldn't ignore a life in need. So, she brought him home and healed his wounds. But instead of gratitude, Ilias met her kindness with suspicion. As the crown prince, he was used to people having ulterior motives. He didn't believe Casimir's help was selfless. But Casimir didn't need his belief. She had already given all her tenderness to her beloved sister. Impatiently, she dressed him, pushed him onto the bed, and forced him to rest. Then she told him, just leave when you're healed. Then you'll believe me. I didn't save you with any ulterior motives. It was simply an act of human kindness. Perhaps men's inherent distrust reminds him of himself. That's why I'm a little more patient with men. Though many are self-absorbed, there are also many like me who can't ignore a life in need. Because life is the most precious thing in the world. So why not be a little bolder? Learn to trust others. No one is an island. Perhaps tonight, the night is especially gentle. Ilias found himself wanting to open up to this unknown woman, to let down his guard after 20-odd years. So, as he was about to leave, he caught her sleeve. He asked her name. Not Casimir, but her real name. She didn't want to tell him. After tonight, they'd never see each other again anyway. I'm shy, she lied. And you? That's not your real name, is it? Despite this, Casimir told him, I'm DD. A palpable awkwardness hung in the air after they both spoke. Neither name sounded remotely real. That night, Casimir rested in a chair outside Ilias's room. Ilias, seemingly fast asleep, suddenly opened his eyes. The person from the streets knelt before him. It was time to leave. But looking at Casimir curled up in the chair, a pang of tenderness unexpectedly struck him. He half knelt, then scooped her up into his arms. The girl was intensely devoted to her sister, Haria, with no interest in romantic partners. Yet here she was, being carried to bed by a man she'd only just met. He stole a kiss on her hand. Goodbye, Shy. I'll miss you. The next morning, Casimir, who had been feigning sleep, was furious. He must have known I wasn't asleep to be so bold. Whether the man knew or not is unclear, but one thing was certain. If he dared to come any closer, Haria would attack him with an 8-meter-long sword. After being away all night, Casimir hurried home. The moment she opened the door, Haria threw herself at her. Sister Shy, you're finally back. Haria had been so worried when Casimir hadn't come home. Holding her sweet, soft sister, Casimir's heart melted. Then, Haria suddenly asked, Sister, do you really only love me? Casimir was puzzled. Haria was more important to her than life itself. Then why don't you take better care of yourself? And why do you keep so many secrets from me? I know I'm spoiled and I like to act cute with you, sister, but you're so important to me. I want to share your burdens. At that moment, Casimir began to question herself. Had her attempts to protect Haria, like hiding her mercenary life, actually caused her more distress? Was this so-called protection truly what Haria needed? She gently embraced Haria. Sister won't go anywhere today. I'll just stay with Haria, okay? Haria's eyes lit up, sparkling with joy. She beamed as the sisters walked through the market. Casimir kept Haria entertained, her laughter a constant melody. But Casimir couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. Making Haria happy was so simple. Years of killing had hardened her, preventing her from considering. How lonely Haria must have been at home alone. Her scarred hand tightened around Haria's small one. Haria looked up at her. Sister Casimir, what's wrong? Casimir pulled her sister close. I will make you happy, I promise. Haria's smile was radiant. I'm so happy right now, she declared. The afternoon sun bathed the two sisters in its warmth. As if the hardships of the past 18 years had never touched them, a sense of peace settled over Casimir and Haria. Happiness felt almost tangible, but as the sisters joyfully perused the menu, Casimir noticed something amiss. A red-haired woman was being dragged into a dark alley by a drunken man. Men fawned over Casimir, the sword saint, yet her heart remained focused on protecting her fragile sister. She lived on the edge, courting danger, fighting and killing, all to safeguard Haria's happiness. One sister constantly battling in the outside world, the other confined within the walls of their home. Finally, a precious moment of respite, a chance to simply be with Harriet. Yet, another call to action, another fight. She couldn't ignore the plight of the red-haired woman being manhandled by the drunkard. Harriet, I'm so sorry. I need to step out for a moment. I'll be right back, Casimir said. Harriet's hand reached out, gently grasping Casimir's arm. A single word from her sister, and Casimir would have stayed. But the word remained unspoken. You really will come back quickly? Harriet asked, her voice laced with concern. You won't get hurt. Of course not. I promise I won't get hurt, Casimir reassured her. Perhaps love wasn't about restraint, but about knowing the other was safe. Harriet released her grip. Casimir rushed out the door, sprinting towards the alley where the red-haired woman had been dragged. Thankfully, she appeared unharmed. Casimir swiftly donned her mercenary persona, Mir, searching for a suitable weapon. Her hand landed on a familiar iron pipe, the same one she'd used to save Ilias. There was no time to find another. The drunkard had pulled a knife, clearly intending to harm the woman. Mir hurled the pipe. It landed with a thud, inches from the drunkard's feet. The man collapsed, paralyzed with fear. Mir appeared behind the woman, offering a curt greeting before retrieving the pipe. This interruption to her time with Harriet had soured her mood considerably. Panic and alcohol fueled the drunkard's rambling. You're a commoner too. Don't you know how nobles treat us? He slurred. That woman bumped into me, called me filthy. Mir glanced back at the woman, seeking confirmation. The noblewoman, flustered, defended herself. That's still no reason to attack me. The drunkard's anger flared. See? He wasn't even going to apologize. They're all the same, these nobles. They deserve to. His words were cut short as Mir slammed him against the wall with a burst of aura. Mir had pieced together the situation. While she didn't condone the noblewoman's behavior, compared to a drunken lout assaulting a woman, the man was clearly in the wrong. No matter how bad one's circumstances, it was no excuse to hurt others. Mir gestured for the woman to leave. She needed to get back to Harriet. Unbeknownst to Mir, the noblewoman was experiencing a sudden rush of infatuation. Was it possible to fall in love with another woman at first sight? The woman had appeared just as she was about to be attacked, saving her from being stabbed. She'd barely managed to introduce herself before succumbing to a wave of emotion and fainting before she could even learn Mir's name. It was only then that Mir realized the full extent of her blunder. The red-haired woman, Giselle Louvain, was the youngest daughter of the esteemed Duke Decker. His family has so much money they could practically eat it. But that's not the main point. The point is, he's always been in love with the male lead of the book, Lena. Later, because of his extreme love for Lena, he ends up hating the female lead, Arya, and becomes the biggest villain in the book, and the catalyst for Llewellyn falling for Lena. Couldn't be this heroic rescue, could it? Just then, a man's voice called out from behind him. So you're the Sword Saint. Watching you fight has been quite inspiring. Could I have a word with you? Casimir panicked, because he just remembered that Rainer Einhalt wasn't just the captain of the Royal Knights, and the man poised to become the next Sword Saint, but also a complete sword fanatic. And what do sword fanatics love most? The Sword Saint, of course. If he admitted to being the Sword Saint, he'd be done for. Thankfully, right now, he was just a sword expert. If things went south, he could just run. He forced himself to calm down, using Llewellyn as a shield. Can't you see I'm busy? Rainer quickly apologized. I just wanted to ask, are you the mercenary king, the Black Scourge, Mir? Good heavens, were this man's eyes glowing? But there was no helping it. Ever since he'd become famous, people were constantly trying to figure out his identity. But his identity was tied to his sister Harriet's safety. Keeping it secret was his top priority. So, he narrowed his eyes and asked the man to introduce himself, using the opportunity to change the subject. He gestured toward the rain, saying he would handle the two unconscious figures, hoping to salvage the situation and stick to the protagonist role. He turned to leave, but Rainer asked his name again. What if I said I wasn't Mir? Would you believe me? The man clearly didn't. Casimir, tired of wasting time, admitted his identity. To his surprise, the usually stoic man flushed crimson with excitement. Mir, can you tell me your real name? Casimir eyed him warily. It was strange. This sword fanatic wasn't curious about his swordsmanship, but about him personally. Why are you so curious about me? Because you promised you'd tell me. Casimir realized the man was obsessed with him, but there was a chilling undercurrent of possessiveness in his gaze. and that possessiveness threatened the woman he was sworn to protect, his precious sister. As a mercenary, his true identity was a secret he couldn't afford to have revealed. He wasn't afraid of dying, but he was terrified of his sister being harmed. And now, this man had discovered it. I'll ask you one last time. Who are you? How do you know my name? Even though the man seemed to know him, he was certain he'd never met him before. The man was silent for a moment, then explained, I'm sorry. I found out by accident through some investigating, but I swear no one else knows your identity. Casimir hesitated, then decided to believe him. But he also gave the man a warning. Rainer Einhalt, was it? I'll remember that name. If you value your head, you'll take Mir's real name to your grave. With that, Casimir turned to leave. But Reiner's voice stopped him. You've always been someone I've looked up to. I want to be just like you. The familiar words gave Casimir pause. It couldn't be. He'd once picked up a dying child, but the two didn't resemble each other at all. Hume hesitated for a moment, then patted the man with a tissue, gesturing for him to stop the bleeding first. He didn't understand why the man wanted to be like him, but he answered as he had once answered the boy. I hope the person you want to become is better than me. Then, without hesitation, Hume turned and left. Perhaps he really had known Lena, but he didn't care, because the world's hustle and bustle had nothing to do with him. He only cared about that frail, sickly girl, and that girl was waiting for him. But now, less than a week remained until Arya's adoption. According to the original story, the day after the Imperial Snow Festival ended, Duke Freya, preparing to return home, would discover Arya collapsed on the roadside. Fortunately, Arya was now very healthy under his care. He wasn't sure if she would still collapse. But to align with the original story, even if it meant faking it, he had to make sure his sister followed the original storyline. Then, he would be all alone. A pang of loss struck him, but he reminded himself, Hume, your fate dictates that you cannot selfishly keep your sister to yourself. Why not? A part of him protested, but he loved his sister too much, as long as she was happy. Even a glimpse of her from afar would be enough for him. A life for 2 steam buns. Only a fool would accept such a mission. The woman clearly knew that, but he still accepted the commission, because he didn't need the money anymore. He had risked his life earning money for his precious sister, but now she was about to be adopted by a wealthy family. He had no more worries. But just as Mir was about to leave after accepting the mission, the intermediary told him that the one who issued the mission, Duke Crisis, wanted to see him. Hume was incredibly nervous, because this man was none other than the rumored Demon Duke, also his own, never-before-seen father in the original novel. He didn't understand why the Duke wanted to see him. Little did he know, it was a trap. The once peaceful Dewdrop village was suddenly attacked by a horde of monsters one day. None of the dispatched troops returned alive. The posted notice, marked with a golden shield, made its meaning clear. Enter at your own peril. Only the strongest mercenary could take on the job, and that could only be Mir, the mercenary king. Hume sat in the hall, anxiously waiting for Crisis. This place was so big and clean. Even the teacups looked expensive. It felt like a different world. He was extremely careful, afraid of dirtying anything. The butler watched him kindly from the side. Suddenly, he noticed Mir's red eyes beneath the mask and asked if his ancestors had any Crisis blood, because red eyes were a unique mark of the Crisis descendants. But Elite. He didn't want to be associated with the Duke, because in the original story, the Demon Duke didn't like his illegitimate child. Even if he acknowledged him, he would allow others to mock and ostracize him, ultimately leading to his twisted, blackened personality. Just then, he felt a stir in his heart. Crisis, the Duke, with the same black hair and red eyes as Mir, slowly approached. Hume quickly put down his luggage. Then, the two sat alone in the hall. Just as Mir nervously considered fleeing, Crisis slowly spoke. Your eyes are beautiful. You needn't be nervous. I was simply curious and wanted to meet you. Mir only wanted to know his reason for giving him this mission. His father was the high and mighty Duke, yet Hume lived a life worse than a dog's. Father and son finally met, but before they could even acknowledge each other, his own father treated him like a fool, saddling him with a high-risk S-rank mission. The reward was pathetic, barely enough to buy 2 steam buns. And the Duke, the very man who issued the mission, now curiously questioned Mir about why he accepted it. He'd heard the tales, of course. The mercenary, Mir, aiding impoverished villages in their battles against monstrous beasts. He couldn't fathom it. A mercenary who didn't work for money? What could his motive possibly be? Hume hadn't realized the Duke had been aware of him for for so long. After a moment of contemplation, he decided on honesty. "Perhaps," he began, "I just want to offer them some protection. I've known hardship, and I've struggled with all my might to become stronger. I've witnessed the happiness of thriving villages, and I've seen the suffering of those without means. Now that I have the power to help others, I can't stand idly by." Before he could finish, the Duke cut him off. A long silence followed. Just as Hume began to worry he'd said something wrong, the elderly steward arrived with a report. The knights who were to accompany Mir to Dewdrop Village were ready. Hume breathed a sigh of relief and prepared to excuse himself. But then, the Duke, after studying him for a long moment, removed the ring that symbolized his lordship. "Take this," he said. He knew how ridiculously low the reward was for such a difficult mission. The Duke himself should have been the one to pay, but then he wouldn't have been able to identify the mercenary king, Mir. After all, few would willingly play the fool. These words, however, remained unspoken. To his surprise, Mir refused. "If I were still going to be with my sister," he said, "perhaps I would accept. But Harriet will soon be going to the Earl's estate. After that, I'll be alone." He couldn't, in good conscience, accept a reward beyond the agreed-upon terms. Chrysis didn't understand his reasoning, but he couldn't force the issue. Everyone had their own principles. After Hume left, Chrysis stared at the ring, lost in thought. He'd removed it to confirm a suspicion. Legend told of a founding myth. During the Age of Chaos, 3 dragons ruled the empire. But one dragon, in its fervent protection of the empire, had its blue eyes stained crimson from the strain. Thus, only direct descendants of Chrysis possessed red eyes. The woman he loved had stolen his child. He'd searched for them both for 18 years without a single trace, until he saw her, the girl with the same crimson eyes. He'd never met such an intriguing little creature. Despite her obvious poverty, she still treated others with kindness. She was clearly not one of his kind. Yet, he found her inexplicably endearing. He decided then, whether or not she was the one he sought, he would find a way to keep her close. Meanwhile, Hume, unaware of his father's newfound interest, was preparing to depart with the knights for Dewdrop Village to hunt the beast. But before he could leave, the lead knight told him to wait. An exceptionally powerful spirit mage would be joining them. Hume's expression turned serious. When he thought of powerful spirit mages, only one person came to mind. The one who, in the original story, turned spirit magic into a synonym for terror. The 5th male lead, Regret, his half-brother, and the person Mir least wanted to see, because that guy was a lunatic. He had a morbid obsession with his younger sister, Arya. Whenever he appeared, a romance story could turn into a horror novel, and as if summoned by fear itself, a sudden thunderclap exploded from nowhere. When the dust settled, the red-eyed, black-haired Kale sauntered forward. As Hume gaped, Kale walked right up to him. "You're the mercenary king, Mir? You're so small. What did you eat growing up?" Hume, speechless for a moment, managed a polite chuckle. "To think you'd be concerned about someone like me, young master. You truly are kind." Kale stared blankly for a moment, then blushed crimson, before clapping Hume on the shoulder. "You're blocking the beggar." Unprepared for the touch, Mir was momentarily stunned. Strange, why does he feel so light? A nearby soldier helpfully explained, "That's a blessing spell. The young master has admired Mir for a long time. He usually doesn't use it on people, does he?" Hume's forced smile faltered. "Admires me? You're joking. Is it not because my beggarly appearance has caught his eye?" Later that evening, Hume stared into the fire, lost in thought. Suddenly, a bowl of soup appeared before him. The esteemed young master thrust the ginger soup into his hands and, under Hume's bewildered gaze, plunked down beside him. "Drink up. What are you staring at? The goddess he loves is in love with another woman. He's truly the most tragic male lead I've ever seen. And those 2 women, one is his father's illegitimate daughter, his own sister, and the other is the woman he's supposed to be madly in love with, the female protagonist of the story." Hume couldn't believe that the aloof noble from the original story was not only personally delivering him soup, but also casually sitting and eating with a lowly mercenary like him. As if reading Hume's mind, Kale scoffed. "I don't know what you think of me, but I'm not the type to abandon my companions and enjoy myself alone." Hume remained silent, stirring his soup. Kale was truly different from his portrayal in the original story. Seeing Hume's silence, Kale grew irritated. "Why don't you quit being a mercenary and become a scholar. Then you can spend all day thinking. Hume sighed. Are you bored, your lordship? Then I'll chat with you. The haughty Kale puffed out his cheeks. Don't treat me like a child. But his curiosity won out. Why did you become a mercenary? And how did you become a hero? Hume thought like father, like son. He'd been asked the same question by Crisis. For the money, of course. But Kale clearly didn't buy it. Someone motivated solely by money could never become a hero. And they certainly wouldn't accept this. Practically unpaid, high-risk mission. Hume smiled. I never intended to be a hero. I want to see people lose their loved ones. Because I also deeply love someone. Arya, my precious little sister. But she's very ill. I live every day in fear of losing her. I know the pain of losing someone you love. It's a profound despair. A despair so deep, you wish you'd never love them at all. And those killed by monsters, they were loved by someone too. So even if it's just a small contribution, I want to help others avoid that pain. In that moment, the 19-year-old boy felt no jealousy, only curiosity and envy. To have someone you deeply love, what must a life like that be? How happy must one be to be loved by such a person? That night, under the clear, starlit sky, the siblings, separated for 18 years, slowly drew closer. And the next day, they finally arrived at Dewdrop Village. Villagers crowded the entrance, waiting to greet them. The knights were horrified by the sight of the monster-ravaged village and the villagers groaning in pain across the land. Mir produced his golden shield and introduced himself. The elderly village chief clasped Mir's hand tightly, sobbing uncontrollably. Hume softly reassured him, "Please, don't worry. I won't let anyone else get hurt. Please tell me what the situation is now." The young lord, sheltered from the harsh realities of the world, had chased his beloved goddess thousands of miles. Arriving at this monster-infested battlefield, he'd envisioned a romantic rendezvous with his goddess. But instead of the idyllic scene he'd imagined, he found only monster-ravaged villages. Everywhere he looked, villagers groaned in pain. The war was so cruel that even sick children were left to die. This reality struck a chord with the man who, in the original story, would unleash chaos whenever he couldn't have the woman he loved. A heavy feeling settled in his chest. When Hume entered the house, he saw Kale standing quietly by the window, an indescribable sadness etched on his face. I didn't realize it was this bad. If I had known sooner. Kale's choked voice left Hume speechless. How could Kale, who lived a life bathed in sunlight, ever understand the existence of shadows? He was only 19. Hume knelt before Kale, gently comforting him. This isn't your fault, Kale. War is inherently cruel, but you didn't run away. You faced it bravely, and that's something to be proud of. Ignorance isn't a sin. What matters is what you do next. In that moment, Arya's smile gave direction to the young man's wavering heart. Even knowing she was his sister, a truth he would learn later, he wouldn't want to let go of her hand. But Hume couldn't rest easy. The situation in Dewdrop Village was more dire than he'd imagined. He learned from the village chief that the village, being remote, rarely saw large monsters. But starting this winter, the normally timid monsters had begun attacking the villagers relentlessly. A week ago, 3 Devilos had invaded the village. The news made Hume's expression grim. Devilos, those were the legendary undead monsters, formed from demonic energy, clinging to canine corpses. He wondered if he would even make it back alive to see his beloved sister. Later that evening, snow fell as he kept watch over the village. A warm drink was offered to him. Aren't you tired, standing guard all this time? Kale stood beside him, a hint of anger in his voice. There are so many strong men here, yet they make you stand watch alone. Hume chuckled. I'm a sword master. I won't die from lack of sleep. But Kale wasn't convinced. Even the strongest are still human. After seeing such horrific things, even the toughest men here are too afraid to sleep. Aren't you scared? Hume's smile turned bitter. How can I not be afraid? The strongest mercenary was afraid of the snow. His beloved master had died saving him, torn apart by monsters in the snow. He didn't like snow. He feared monsters even more. But now he'd grown up. He was a mercenary who slew monsters. And on this snowy night, he stood watch alone for his comrades. It wasn't because he'd conquered his fear. It was because he feared something even more than death, losing the people he loved. So when Kale asked, "Aren't you afraid of the monsters?" he simply replied with a playful tone, "Of course not. I'm strong. I'll keep them away from you. You just rest easy, Kale." Then, the young nobleman, Kale, who had been terrified of the monsters during the day, now chuckled. "Thanks to you, I'm not afraid now. After all, you'll protect me, won't you?" The snow fell silently that night. Hume didn't reply. No one could have imagined that those seemingly playful words would become a pain that would choke Kale every time he remembered them. Because the next day, a massive horde of monsters began their assault on Dewdrop Village. Despite the two working together, driving the monsters back from the village's edge, they barely had a moment to relax after dealing with one wave. When Hume's expression changed, he'd sensed it. Not far from them, a countless number of monsters were converging with terrifying speed. Seeing this, Kale hurriedly grabbed him, asking what was wrong. Hume didn't have time to answer. He hoisted Kale onto his shoulder and raced back to camp, ordering everyone to evacuate immediately. A massive horde is approaching. We have to use teleportation magic to escape. He questioned everyone about their magical capabilities. He later learned there were 14 people in total, but their teleportation magic was only enough for 12. That meant 2 people had to stay behind. Hume had no intention of leaving. If he left, no one could stop the monsters from overrunning the village. So he asked Kale, "Young master, can you use teleportation magic? I can teleport 10 people." Kale, sensing Hume's intentions, suddenly changed his tune. I never learned teleportation magic. I can stay with you, Hume." Hume understood instantly. He gritted his teeth. Absolutely not. He finally understood the meaning of blood being thicker than water. For this brother, he'd only known for 2 days. Kale didn't want him to get hurt. "Young master, you must live," Hume declared, punching Kale in the stomach, knocking him unconscious. Kale, struggling awake, angrily threatened, "If you dare go, I swear." Hume smiled. "Then wait for me to come back alive." He'd promised his sister, Arya, he'd return home after killing the monsters. But this time, he was going to break that promise. Facing the onslaught of countless monsters, he was giving the chance of survival to others. He might not make it back alive. Hume fought from day into night. He was on the verge of collapse. They say that in the face of death, you think of what matters most. He believed it now. He longed to see Arya one last time. Just as the monsters were about to tear him apart, a powerful defensive spell shielded him. Hume froze. Then he looked up. He saw Kale recklessly throwing himself into the fray. He felt no joy at being saved. Instead, he wanted to yell at him. He knew how hard he'd hit Kale earlier. But looking at Kale's trembling arms, he said nothing. The situation was dire. Dealing with the monsters was paramount. He explained the situation to Kale. "These devil dogs are essentially animated corpses. Normal attacks won't kill them. The best way is to use enchanted weapons or destroy their hearts." Hume proposed he act as a distraction while Kale attacked from behind with fire magic. But this was incredibly risky. If Hume fell, Kale would be in mortal danger. He made Kale promise him that if he saw Hume go down, he would run. Kale started to argue, but Hume roared, "If you don't promise, I'll knock you unconscious and send you back myself." He wanted Kale to live, not because he was the Duke's heir, but because he was like family. Unaware of the true reason, Kale reluctantly agreed. Then, Hume kept the monsters at bay while Kale unleashed a torrent of fire, obliterating them. Just as he cut down a monster, Mir was bitten firmly on the arm by another. Fortunately, he was a mercenary who used dual swords. Now, his left arm was mangled and the situation dire. Hume could only ask Kale to buy them as much time as possible. The only option left was to completely pulverize the monster's insides. That meant using his signature move. If this attack succeeded, they would survive. Thankfully, before Kale reached his limit, Hume's powerful blade, with the force of a landslide, slaughtered all the monsters. Kale finally collapsed, his ordeal over. He hadn't expected surviving to feel like this. Mir slumped beside him, asking if he had the strength to go back. Receiving a negative response, Mir told him to sleep. "I'll carry you back." Kale worried. "Isn't your arm injured?" Mir smiled reassuringly. "So, are we friends now?" Under the falling snow, Kale never answered. Mir loved him, but didn't dare confess. He only wanted to stay by his side as a friend. Firstly, because Kale had said he had someone he loved, and he didn't want to intrude. Secondly, because he felt he was sick, unworthy, because of the hereditary mental illness in his family. He couldn't control his bloodlust. So, self-destructive slaughter had become his only hobby. Until one day, he saw a recording of a woman fighting. It was also the first time he heard the name of the mercenary, Mir. From then on, the girl's image miraculously became the medicine that healed his heart. When his father heard about this, he wanted to help his son investigate her identity. But Kale refused. He didn't want to expose what Mir had painstakingly hidden, like some petty villain. 2 years passed like this. When when he learned that Mir had gone to fight monsters. He chased after him for 20,000 li from the northwestern border, just to see him once. He wanted to confirm with his own eyes if he was someone worth his infatuation. The moment he saw him, he knew he could never let this person go. After experiencing life and death together, he thought he could get closer to him. But when he woke up, the man was gone. But someone who has lived in darkness, having felt the warmth of the sun, how could he give up that light? Go and investigate. Find out his identity at all costs. Or prepare to commit suicide. His father merely scoffed. He didn't know the love Kale hadn't dared to confess then. It would be impossible to express when they met again. Meanwhile, Mir was dragging his battered arm, limping towards his cabin in the woods where he recuperated. He couldn't let his precious little sister see him like this. But as soon as he entered, he sensed something was wrong. Who's there? Suddenly, the lights came on. Elias stood with his hands raised. It's me. Sir, please. Mir was stunned. He couldn't understand why the young man he had saved last time was here. Elias then healed Hume's arm. Hume asked him his purpose for being there. Unbeknownst to him, since being rescued, Elias had waited there every day, hoping to see him again. But the young man simply said he was passing by and needed a place to stay. Hume didn't understand what he meant, but with the weather outside, he couldn't bring himself to turn him away. Elias had to stay here for the time being. He told Mir he called him Daddy last time, so he wasn't curious about his identity anymore. Mir, however, said it wasn't necessary. Anyone could tell he was a nobleman, while Mir, was just a commoner. Even if he knew, they wouldn't even have the chance to sit together. He casually brushed aside the man's hair, realizing he was using magic to conceal his appearance again. But it didn't matter. He might as well just think of him as Daddy and himself as Baby. Unexpectedly, this gesture, coupled with the inability to see his beloved goddess, would drive the man to lose his mind and go on a killing spree. If he couldn't find any news of her, then everyone might as well die. But he didn't know that his goddess was not only cuddling with another man, but they were also sleeping together. The girl, unintentionally brushing the boy's hair aside, stirred the already burgeoning emotions in the young man's heart. Elias pressed Mir's weathered hand tightly against his face, feeling like he was going crazy. Ever since Mir saved him, he missed him when he was gone and felt like he couldn't grasp him when he was present. He felt a little wronged. You really do have the ability to make people strange, he said. Mir didn't understand what he meant, wondering what nonsense he was talking about. The boy lowered his eyes, stubbornly refusing to speak. The wind and snow outside grew heavier. Hume, having taken the healing medicine, felt drowsy, like he was drunk. Looking at Mir lying on the bed, the young man's face flushed crimson. Hume, dizzy and lightheaded, completely oblivious to the impropriety, kept inviting him to come to bed. After all, there was only one bed in the cabin. The young man's blush spread all the way down his neck. Are you actually crazy? He thought. The medicine, combined with nervous tension and a long-deprived need for sleep, made it impossible for Hume to control his actions. He continued to mutter incoherently. The young man, flustered, felt his heart pounding in his chest. After extinguishing the lamp, Elias sat fuming on the edge of the bed. Mir's apparent indifference both embarrassed and annoyed him. The drowsy Hume urged him to sleep, but a few minutes later, Elias was still sitting there, sulking. Exasperated, Hume pulled him onto the bed. If you don't sleep now, I'll put you to sleep permanently. Before he could finish speaking, Hume fell fast asleep on the bed, feeling the warm breath on his neck. The young man's heart pounded like a drum. He knew it was the medicine, but looking at Hume clinging to him like a koala, the young man, his heart already aflutter, found sleep impossible. And when he woke up the next day and saw the boy clinging tightly to him, Hume felt his blood rush to his head, wanting to bang his head against the wall. Later, he rushed to see his beloved sister. Hearing him, his sister excitedly came to greet him. But seeing his injuries, her expression changed dramatically. Alia, however, didn't say anything. She just hugged Mir tightly. It was enough that he had returned safely. She didn't want him to know. He pretended not to notice, as always. He squeezed his sister's hand. Dinner's ready. Let's eat. But in contrast to their peaceful scene, the outside world was already in an uproar, because Alia had suddenly discovered a missing person notice in the newspaper. The youngest daughter of the esteemed Duke Kale was looking for a knight wearing a black mask. According to the description, the knight bore a striking resemblance to the Black Calamity, Mir. Hearing this news, Hume choked on his food, spraying it out. Alia glanced at her sister and continued reading the newspaper description. Last week, Rosalind had encountered bandits while out and about and had been saved by the night. But coincidentally, it happened at the same time and place that the sisters had been shopping. Hume wiped the sweat from his brow. Is that so? It's quite a coincidence, Hume mused. Alia said it was a newspaper, so it must be, but I've always felt that Alia is a bit too kind, almost foolish. This ambiguous smile sent a shiver of unease down Hume's spine. He couldn't tell if his sister knew something. Afterwards, the two sat around the fireplace, Alia reading a book and Mir looking at the newspaper. Suddenly, news of the prince's ascension to the throne caught Mir's attention. This was because the person was none other than one of the 4 candidates for Kale's hand in marriage in the original story, Lyatara. He was the monarch of the Atara kingdom, an allied nation of the empire. The Atara kingdom was renowned for its gems and military prowess, until the arrival of this, the youngest and most capable monarch in history. Although he had been ruthless in his ascent to the throne, he was a complete sweetheart to Alia. A man like this was exactly the kind of husband Hume envisioned for his sister. Yet, an image flickered in his mind of a white-haired youth smiling and calling him shy sister. He told himself he must be overthinking. Though their eyes were similar, their auras were vastly different. When he looked back at Alia, he realized she had fallen asleep at some point. Mir got up, carried her to bed, and leaned down to kiss her forehead. "Good night, my love," he whispered. Late at night, as Hume worked at his desk, he suddenly heard his sister cry out in pain. His expression changed instantly, and he rushed to Alia's room. He found his sister curled up in bed, writhing in agony. He was nearly frantic. Because Alia was the child of his mother and the Elven King, the half-elven blood within her made it difficult for her to adapt to the human world. Therefore, every time she had an episode, it tormented her unbearably. Only the spiritual energy of the elven forest could save her. One dose could extend her life for 10 years. But the spiritual energy of the elven forest was sometimes priceless. It might take a century to produce a single bottle. Hume worked tirelessly to earn money, but he could only afford substitute potions. However, the effects of the potions were limited. Now, only the spiritual energy of the elven forest could save Alia's life. In the original story, Alia was saved by Duke Freya, who gave her the spiritual energy that saved her life. But they hadn't crossed paths yet. He wouldn't help save Alia. Hume frantically searched his mind for someone who could. Einhalt, perhaps, or the benevolent god of love. Would they help him save his sister? But he couldn't bring himself to trust their inexplicable goodwill. What reason did they have to help them? He thought of everyone he could, but there was nowhere to turn. He broke down. "I am sorry, Alia. I don't know who can save you." Suddenly, his eyes widened. "No, there's one more person. Duke Chrysis, my father. He has a reason to help me, even if he uses my resemblance to his daughter, even if it's despicable. But as long as it saves Alia, I'm willing to pay any price. Alia, just hold on a little longer." He held his sister tightly and walked step by step towards the Duke's mansion. The figure emerging from the darkness immediately alerted the guards. When they saw Mir's face, they were startled. "Master Mir, what brings you here?" He held his sword out. "Move aside. I need to see the Duke." Sensing his desperation, the guards hesitated. "It's too late tonight. Come back tomorrow." "There's no time." Hume was near the breaking point. "I have to see him now." Just then, Alia began to cough violently in his arms. He gritted his teeth and decided to force his way in. A guard pointed out a shortcut, but he didn't care, holding his sister tightly in his arms, enduring the pain that felt like a storm of blades. He bore it all, pushing through the ranks of guards, racing with his sister all the way to the Duke's gates. He pounded frantically on the iron, begging, "Please, open the door." The steward, arriving in a flurry, watched Hume literally beat the gates to pieces. Like a cornered animal, Hume pleaded, "Please, let me see the Duke. My sister is gravely ill. She's fading fast." Although Hume's voice was different than before, the steward recognized him. He dismissed the approaching guards, but refused Hume's request to see the Duke. The Duke had already retired for the night and could not be disturbed. However, he had heard that Hume had distinguished himself in the recent monster subjugation at Verger Village. As a token of gratitude, he offered to summon a physician. Hume's eyes were practically dripping blood. A physician is useless. If a physician could cure her, do you think I would have given her up? My precious Alia, whom I raised for 15 years, given to Duke Freya. Just then, Alia in his arms was seized by another violent coughing fit, hacking up blood. Hume broke down. "Please, quickly get Chrysis. Save my Alia." The Black Bane, the scourge feared throughout the Empire, was now helpless like a child. Why was he even alive? Alia, his sister, was his whole world. If she died, how could he possibly go on? The sheer despair radiating from him stunned everyone present. No one could comprehend such profound grief. It was Alia's faint breathing that pulled Hume back from the brink of collapse. His sister was still alive. He couldn't give up. Trembling, he placed her on the ground, stood up, and demanded of the steward, "Who do you serve? Whose orders do you follow?" Though startled, the steward answered truthfully, "I serve only Duke Chrysis and his bloodline." "Then listen to my command now." As the steward watched in shock, Hume ripped off the eye patch and cloak, revealing a face strikingly similar to Duke Chrysis. Then, Hume's voice rang out, echoing across the grounds. "I am Duke Chrysis's child, Hume Chrysis. I order you to take me to my father immediately. Anyone who stands in my way will be killed." Finally, Duke Chrysis himself appeared at the top of the stairs. He ordered the steward to stand down and descended the steps towards Hume. "You say my daughter?" Looking at Hume's face, so much like his own, he said with a hint of amusement, "Yes, the resemblance is uncanny. You look like me and your mother, but you asked me to save your sister. That child isn't my blood, is she?" Hume explained, "She's my half-sister on my mother's side." Chrysis's expression hardened. "Then why should I save her? If his sister died, Hume would die with her. But as long as she still drew breath, he would fight to save her. That's why Hume had stormed the Duke's mansion, braving blades and shadows, pounding his fists until the iron gates shattered. He knelt before the Duke, the father who didn't love him, who practically wished him dead, and begged, abjectly, "Please, I beseech you, for the sliver of blood we share, for the fact that I am your bastard daughter, save my sister." But Chrysis refused. He saw at once that the girl on the ground was not his blood. The Duke's face twisted in a cruel sneer. "Then why should I save her?" Hume's fists clenched. Hume turned, his gaze softening as he looked at his sister. "Because your daughter loves him so very much. I never thought I could love someone this much. Before Alia was born, my mother and I clung to each other in the red light district. Our lonely world held no hope until Alia arrived. That tiny child was like a gentle rain in my desolate world. She brought color back to my barren life. And little by little, that small girl, without me even realizing it, became my entire world. I have to protect her, even if it costs me my life. But I know my lowly status as your illegitimate daughter isn't enough for you to save my sister. So, I want to make a deal with you." Chrysis crossed his arms, a gesture that suggested he wasn't interested in any deals. Hume picked up the sword from the floor. The black Dookie, the energy of a sword saint, swirled around him like a whirlwind. He plunged the sword into the ground. Kneeling on one knee, Hume declared, "I swear on my life, I am a sword saint. I've lived my life by the sword. If you agree to save my sister, I will become a loyal sword in the service of your house." The unwavering determination in Hume's eyes gave Chrysis pause. But just then, Alia was seized by another violent coughing fit. Hume rushed to her side. "She coughed up blood just now. If she keeps coughing like this, she won't last. Her body is almost ice cold." Hume was on the verge of collapse. "Please, I beg you, if you'll just take me into your service. I swear I'll be your most valuable asset. My swordsmanship was honed in countless battles against magical beasts. I know their habits inside and out. With a single command from you, I'll charge to the front lines and face the enemy with my own flesh and blood." Chrysis's body trembled almost imperceptibly, with her own flesh and blood. Hume's head slammed against the cold floor. Again and again, the impact reverberated, not just against the stone, but against the hearts of everyone present. "If you'll just save Alia, I'll do anything. If you want me to be a dog, I'll crawl on the ground. If you want me dead, I'll draw my sword and end it myself. I don't even ask to be your daughter. Just please, I beg you, save my Alia." In that moment, everyone held their breath, stunned into silence. What depth of love could drive someone to willingly surrender their life, to abandon even the most basic human dignity? Chrysis walked, step by deliberate step, towards the trembling girl. "Get up, Hume." Hume stared at the man's hand. "My daughter doesn't kneel to anyone. Not even the Emperor can make you bow." He then lifted Alia into his arms and handed her to the steward. Hume started to explain Alia's illness, but Chrysis cut her off. "Half-elven blood, isn't it?" He'd seen it the moment he laid eyes on her. "I know she needs spiritual energy." The man gently stroked Hume's head. "Your name is Hume, isn't it? Hume Chrysis. Don't worry, I'll save your sister." Hume couldn't understand. Why would someone so noble claim her, someone so lowly, as his daughter? Head bowed, she wept silently. He was her biological father, yes, but he was also the one who had risen to power by stepping on his father's corpse. the demon duke, whose name struck fear into the hearts of the entire empire. How could she, a lowly bastard, dare to hope he would acknowledge their blood tie, that he would show even a flicker of familial affection? But she never expected that the demon everyone spoke of would extend a hand to her with such gentleness, not only offering to save her sister's life, but telling her, "My daughter is precious. She doesn't bow to anyone." She didn't understand. Lowly as she was, with nothing but her sister in the world, why would such a noble man want to be her father? And, without asking for anything in return, offer a glimmer of hope in her crumbling world. Chris's heart was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. How could he tell her that he had searched for her for 18 long years? In truth, Chrysis knew better than anyone the icy depths of his own heart. The former duke had never treated him as a son, and he, in turn, had never seen the man as a father. When the man, with a sneer on his lips, had commanded him to kill him, his sword had fallen without a flicker of hesitation. Though he seemed to possess everything, in reality, he had nothing but a cruel moniker. He didn't understand love, nor did he need it. Even after Kyle's birth, he hadn't dared to hope he could be a good father. Then he met her. Even on the brink of despair, she had clung fiercely to the things she loved, willing to sacrifice everything for them. The sheer force of her spirit had shaken him to his core. For the first time, the demon within him yearned for connection. But in the end, she chose to leave. He had abandoned all hope of love. Then, suddenly, one day, his daughter appeared before him, before this hardened, weary Chrysis. She breathed life back into his decaying soul, looking into the girl's resolute gaze, so like her mother's. The notoriously cold-blooded man's eyes softened with tenderness. "Perhaps you won't believe this," he said, "but I've been waiting for you. Beyond the fact that you are my daughter, I genuinely care for you. That is why I acknowledge you as my own. I will tell you everything in time." Meanwhile, Alia, having received the spirit energy in time, was no longer in mortal danger. The physician assured Hume that with a week of rest, she would make a full recovery. In that moment, Hume, the revered sword saint, all but stumbled towards her sister, pressing Alia's hand to her forehead, tears streaming down her face. Sometimes, what comes with finding something lost is not just relief, but a profound fear. She had almost lost her precious sister, her beloved Alia of 15 years. Chrysis watched the sisters in silence. He quietly instructed the servants to prepare the room next to his own, ordering a bath to be drawn in advance. Once Hume had calmed, he brought a servant before her. "Greetings, Mississippi. My name is Maria. It's a pleasure to meet you." Hume immediately bowed, murmuring, "Thank you. I look forward to your assistance." Both stood frozen for a moment. Seeing this, Maria quickly dropped to one knee. "I am your servant. Please, there's no need for such formality." Chrysis, observing Hume's evident discomfort, intervened. "You're not a guest here. This is your home." He sighed, adding gently, "It will take some time to adjust. Your room is next to mine. You can come to me anytime." After Chrysis left, Maria, sensing Hume's unease, offered reassurance. "I understand this must feel overwhelming, but please believe me, a father's love for his child is the most natural thing in the world." Hume couldn't find the words to describe the emotions swirling within her. She and her sister had teetered on the edge of survival for 18 years, cultivating a strength she had believed impenetrable. Now, someone was concerned for her well-being. Hume didn't yet know that she wouldn't just have a father, but a brother who would fiercely protect her. His daughter had finally returned home, and the old father's first act was to offer her a suite of rooms. But upon seeing her new quarters, she froze. The opulent room boasted not only a 30-meter wide bed, but a private sitting room. Even the bathroom was extravagant, resembling a swimming pool. She had been used to drafty thatched huts and a narrow, hard bed. This place in its lavishness felt like paradise. It was so beautiful, it felt like a dream. When a servant offered to help her change, Hume refused, startled. Maria assumed it was shyness, a reluctance to be assisted. She didn't realize, except for the time she was injured, Hume couldn't ask her father for healing. Otherwise, she never dared to remove her clothes in front of others, afraid her scars would frighten them. As her clothes slowly slipped away, revealing a back almost entirely covered in scars, even Maria, a woman who had seen much of the world, couldn't suppress a gasp. Hume, Flustered, apologized profusely. She wanted to dress and leave immediately, but Maria quickly caught her hand. Maria explained that she wasn't frightened, but heartbroken. What kind of life had this 18-year-old girl lived to bear such deep scars? How much pain she must have endured. Maria's warm words caused a deep ache in Hume's chest. Still, Hume smiled and reassured the woman. It's all right. These scars are nothing to me. At her words, tears welled up in Maria's eyes. There was no such thing as a scar that was nothing. Only people who forced themselves to believe it was nothing. Hume bit her lip, holding back her own tears. This was her life. Those who lived by the sword were constantly prepared to die. But she never felt bitter. She had people she wanted to protect, but she had failed. The thought of her sister, still unconscious in bed, finally broke her composure, and she began to cry. Thankfully, their future would be brighter from now on. After washing up, dawn had broken. Hume stared at the ceiling. The bed beneath her was so soft, it felt like a cloud, unreal. The warm room was filled with a comforting scent. Her tense nerves could finally relax. She thought if this were a dream, she wished it would last a little longer. The next morning, she discovered it wasn't a dream at all. Her father, the Duke, had even prepared an extravagant table laden with dazzling sweets and a lavish spread of every imaginable delicacy. He'd left a note urging her to eat everything and gain some weight. His words even hinted at a slight disapproval of her frail physique. Hume's hands trembled as she looked at the feast. What did my father think I am? The sudden affection left her both overwhelmed and deeply uneasy. Everything here was the complete opposite of her previous life. Without having to pay any price, she had a warm home and delicious food. Everyone's faces were filled with genuine kindness, as if they were trying to make up for all the love she had missed. She had encouraged Alia to accept kindness from others. But now, experiencing such warmth herself for the first time, she felt incredibly awkward and self-conscious. Even her ears burned. This was all beyond anything she had ever hoped for. It didn't belong to her. She was a shadow in the night, a being meant to remain hidden. The Duke's light had saved Alia. That alone was a debt she could never repay. She hadn't dared to dream of a life like this. Even if she had to leave immediately, she wouldn't complain. She didn't mind returning to a life like a rat's. But Alia couldn't. Her precious sister. She wanted Alia to always be surrounded by kindness, to live a happy life. But things had already deviated drastically from the original story. Alia hadn't been adopted by Freya. Could she dare to hope that Duke Chrysis would adopt her? She believed her darling sister was loved by everyone. Chrysis would surely adore her, and Chrysis' status was far higher than Freya's. That meant Alia would be truly happy. Lost in thought, a delicate fragrance suddenly reached her nose. Looking up, she saw a splash of vibrant color amidst the icy landscape. He looked up. Thousands of plum blossoms bloomed defiantly amidst the white snow, a sight of breathtaking beauty he had never witnessed before. Finding himself alone, a playful impulse stirred within him. With a leap, he sprang onto a branch. The surrounding scenery unfolded beneath him. The vast courtyard, seemingly glazed with ice and snow, was a breathtaking spectacle that held him captive. A gentle breeze stirred Hume's dark hair. The contrast of red plum blossoms against the white snow, with Hume framed within it, created a picturesque scene that captivated the observer below. Hume suddenly remembered how much she loved climbing trees as a child, often ending up hanging upside down. Since no one was around, she decided to try it again. Lifting her legs slightly, she spun her body around. Her dark hair danced in the air with the falling petals. Her joyous laughter echoed through the plum grove. For the first time in 18 years, she felt this carefree and relaxed. It was as if she had escaped the noise of the world. Only the fragrance of blossoms surrounded her, and the playful snowflakes tickled her nose. Suddenly, a figure appeared, freezing the smile on her face. Kyle, dressed in red, stood watching her with a raised eyebrow. Startled, Hume lost her footing and fell from the tree. But instead of the expected pain, she landed in Kyle's strong embrace. His warm eyes looked down at her, leaving Hume utterly speechless. He asked her what she was doing there, having heard she wasn't due back until later that evening. Her flustered appearance made him laugh. After hearing that the mercenary king, Hume, was his sister, he couldn't focus on work. He rushed back to the estate almost immediately, although they shared a life-altering experience. Hume, familiar with the original storyline, knew that Kyle had hated her. Even if the current plot was different, she assumed this aspect wouldn't change. With that thought, she quickly jumped out of Kyle's arms, failing to notice the look of disappointment on his face and the hand he slowly lowered. His voice was low and tinged with sadness. "Have I done something to make you dislike me?" Hume didn't understand why he would ask such a thing. Kyle's voice dropped further. "During the last monster invasion, I didn't listen to you and snuck out. I wasn't even able to help. Is that why you left without even saying goodbye?" The moment he learned Hume was his half-sister, he rushed home without a moment's hesitation. "But you won't even call me brother," he said, his eyes filled with hurt. "Are you sure you don't hate me?" He started to sob, which completely panicked Hume. "I absolutely don't hate you," she insisted. "I'm really happy to have a brother like you. I'm just not used to having so many relatives suddenly. I'm afraid of doing something wrong and upsetting you." Because to her, Kyle was a high-born young master, while she felt like an imposter. She had grown up with her sister in the bleak darkness of the back alleys, a worthless mercenary. Now, she suddenly occupied the position of a duke's daughter. It seemed strange that Kyle would like her as a sister. Her words stung Kyle deeply. He wondered what she had endured to have such a low opinion of herself. He told her earnestly, "You are not a worthless mercenary. You are a Chrysis, my only sister. You saved my life. No one, including yourself, should belittle your life." He didn't know what his existence meant to her. If he hadn't stumbled upon that magical opportunity and seen the precious recording of her fighting, he might have already become a bloodthirsty monster. Completely enslaved by desire, he gently took the girl's hand. "Before you even knew I existed, you had already saved me from the abyss." He half knelt before her, pious, like a true believer. "And so, my respect and love for you arise spontaneously. You needn't be so timid in accepting my kindness." Hume, startled, withdrew her hand, still reeling from the shock. Kyle smiled. "So what should I call you now? Is there a nickname in the book, Tasha Homer?" Hume responded instinctively. "My sister calls me Shy Shy. Then I'll call you Shy Shy too. I'll look forward to getting to know you better, my dear sister." The unease he felt after their abrupt separation that day finally dissolved in their shared honesty. Afterwards, the Duke had a servant invite them both to his study. Kyle took the opportunity to explain the layout of the Duke's estate. Just then, Alia's voice drifted faintly from the study, causing Hume's expression to cloud over. Her sister's voice was starkly different from its usual sweetness. It was laced with a harshness Hume had never heard before. The other voice in the room belonged to her father, the Duke. In the quiet room, only her sister and the Duke were present, unlike others who were cautious in the Duke's presence. Alia's face was openly scornful and sneering. She knew Chrysis didn't like her, the daughter of his rival. Unfortunately for him, she loathed him just as much. But she knew Chrysis wouldn't dare harm her. Having grown up in the red light district, she had long since mastered the art of reading people. Even the cold-blooded Duke, infamous for fratricide, couldn't hide the tenderness in his eyes when he spoke of her sister, Shy Shy. No matter how much he detested her, the Duke wouldn't dare harm the person her sister loved most. Chrysis's eyes narrowed. "You're quite bold." But Alia was undeterred. She even slammed her hand on the man's desk. Her voice was glacial. "You say my sister asked you for the jungle spirit to save me. What did she offer in exchange? After all, the infamous Demon Duke wouldn't help someone he has no connection with for no reason, just because you're Shy Shy's father. Where were you when my sister was suffering, your noble grace? Are you interested in her because she's the mercenary king, Mir, or do you just want to toy with us, a pair of back alley sisters?" Chrysis radiated a killing intent that seemed to solidify the air. "If you want to live, at least know your boundaries, child." At the door, Hume's heart clenched in her chest, but Kyle gestured for her to wait. Alia's eyes, however, curved into crescents. "That's what I wanted to say to you, your grace. My sister Shy Shy is different from me. She's foolish. She can't resist kindness and generosity. If someone is just a little bit nice to her, she'll give them her heart. She's not as strong as you think. If you're just playing with her and abandon her in the end, she'll be heartbroken." In that moment, Hume felt as if her heart had been squeezed. The sister she had always thought she needed to protect was somehow secretly protecting her too. Inside, Alia dipped into a curtsy. "Technically, I shouldn't be so aggressive with my savior, but my sister's well-being is more important to me than my own safety. If you don't intend to see this through, don't be too kind to her." I hope you understand. If you hurt my sister, I will sell my soul to the devil and kill you. The air hung heavy and silent, thick with the weight of her words. Kyle was taken aback by such audacious courage. Hume's lips trembled, and then he softly called out his sister's name. His eyes softened as he looked at his precious sister. The moment Alia saw Hume, her sharp barbs and bared fangs retreated. She softened, her vulnerability exposed, and she rushed into Hume's arms, seeking comfort and affection. Hume smiled, stroking Alia's hair, asking her to wait patiently. Then he walked directly to the Duke, bowed deeply, and apologized, begging him to forgive Alia's outburst. Alia watched aghast. The Duke rose smoothly. "No need for apologies," he said. "As Alia said, if I didn't intend to take responsibility, I wouldn't have offered kindness in the first place. So, Alia and Hume, both of you will be my daughters. I will take responsibility for you both." With a single word, father, the girls could have wealth beyond measure. But Alia saw it as a disgrace. He had stolen her beloved sister. Calling him father felt like enabling a thief. But for Hume's happiness, when the Duke asked if she would be his daughter, Alia clung to Hume's arm, willing to endure humiliation. But she still issued a warning. "My only family will always be shy." Hume broke out in a cold sweat at her words. The Duke crossed his arms, speechless. "You're a difficult one. You should praise my bravery." He sighed, resigned. "And Hume, what do you think?" The room held its breath, waiting for Hume's answer. Hume's fists clenched, silence stretching as he struggled to express the tumultuous emotions within him. He had sacrificed so much just for a glimpse of his sister's happiness. He had thought that seeing her from afar was enough. But now, their father was offering them a life together. A life where he wouldn't have to be separated from his sister. A life where they could both find happiness. "I'm truly worthless. But if you don't mind someone who only knows how to wield a sword, I would like to be your daughter, Duke." Hume's earnest plea amused the Duke. He had seen Hume's fearless courage, witnessed his desperate devotion to his sister. But this was the first time he had seen such childlike eagerness and hope in his eyes. Something within the Duke softened, melting away the hardened layers. He gently stroked Hume's head. "That's enough. Congratulations on becoming my daughters." With the matter settled, Kyle's anxiety finally eased. As he turned to leave, Alia's voice stopped him. "Good day, young master." She offered an elegant curtsy, a harmless smile gracing her lips. Kyle chuckled. "So, this is the innocent act you put on for Hume." He had seen the true Alia just moments ago. "There's no need for such pretenses with me." His use of Hume's nickname was a subtle challenge. Alia tilted her head playfully. "If you say so, then I won't hold back. You probably figured it out, but I'm not very fond of you and your father." Kyle shrugged. The feeling was mutual, but Hume doesn't see it that way. "You hold a different place in her heart. No one understands how much my sister craves family more than I do. You truly want Hume to be happy, don't you? But you should also know that my sister's happiness depends on me being there. That's why I'm here." He hoped to reach a cooperation with the young master in order to cure his illness. He knew how much his sister had suffered for him. If it were possible, he had wished countless times to free his sister from the burden he represented, to allow her to find her own happiness. But the bond between them was like a twin-trunk tree. He would die without her, and she couldn't live without him. He knew that for his sister to be happy, she needed more than just a clingy younger brother. She needed more family to dote on her. So, to protect his sister, he took the initiative to approach Kyle. He hoped to coexist peacefully with him. He knew Kyle and Chrysis held special places in his sister's heart. Upon hearing this, Kyle let out a chuckle. "I suppose that's the case. After all, I'm the one Hume likes." He didn't like Alia. It wasn't just his possessiveness over Hume. It was also her importance to Mir, the mercenary king. He didn't need to ask about what happened when Alia snuck into the Duke's estate. He could glean how thrilling it had been from the servants' whispers. Kyle's words were a clear declaration of war. But Alia, upon hearing them, smiled radiantly. "Is that so? But you seem to have forgotten. Sister loves me the most. We'll see about that." The tension between them was palpable, but in the end, it was Alia who extended his hand. He hadn't forgotten his goal, peaceful coexistence. Not as siblings, however, but as colleagues. Kyle, with a faint smile, took his hand in return, as if offering a response. But in the next second, they both recoiled in mutual disgust, flinging each other's hands away. "Well then, I'll be going." "See you at dinner, brother Kyle." Kyle replied cheerfully, "All right, see you later." And with that, they parted ways, their rivalry firmly cemented. Meanwhile, Mir, oblivious to the undercurrents between the two, was being prepared by Chrysis for his and Alia's debut at a social ball. This social ball was of paramount importance. Noble sons and daughters who had reached the age of 15 would be attending, and their performance on their debut would influence their future standing in society. For this, Chrysis had hired a renowned social etiquette instructor, Countess Helena. Because both were beginners and time was short, Countess Helena devised a rigorous schedule for them. According to the plan, they were to have 4 hours of etiquette lessons every day, until the day before their social debut. The lessons, originally scheduled for 6 days, were unexpectedly completed in just 2 hours. The man, a bachelor for 18 years, suddenly found himself with 2 blossoming daughters overnight. His elder daughter was the fearsome first sword saint, and his younger daughter, the future reigning flower of high society. Yet these 2 exceptional girls managed to astound their etiquette instructor to the point of dropping to her knees. Countess Helena had heard whispers about the 2 newly appointed daughters of the Duke. She'd heard they had grown up in the slums and were essentially clueless about noble etiquette. Duke Chrysis's intentions were clear. He wanted to use the Empire's Snowflake Ball in 6 days as an opportunity to introduce his daughters to all the nobles and royalty. He had anticipated a tight schedule. The lessons, originally planned for 6 days, were unexpectedly concluded within 2 hours. Their intelligence left their teacher humbled. Young Alia's perfect curtsy, elegant as a swan, every gesture and smile as if she were a born noble. And Mir, the worst student, the one who never paid attention in class, surprised Countess Helena. She hadn't expected him to master the ballroom dance after only 1 viewing. The teacher was full of praise for her 2 gifted students. Although their performance was impeccable, the Countess couldn't ignore their humble origins. She worried that someone at the ball might use their background against them. So, as a precaution, she decided they should practice their conversational skills. 2 hours later, the Countess was defeated. She hadn't anticipated the fierce protectiveness of the 2 young women. She asked Mir how he would respond if someone insulted Alia. Mir, throwing off his gloves in a fit of pique, retorted in a single breath, "Which bastard dares insult my Alia? Let him face me. I'll fight him to the death." Wiping the sweat from her brow, the Countess then turned to Alia. "And Miss Alia, I'd strip him naked, dangle him from the balcony, then. Alia's eye-opening torrent of profanity left the Countess utterly speechless. The Countess prayed they wouldn't use such language in front of the Emperor and the Pope. Kyle, who happened to be observing, was doubled over with laughter. He deeply regretted not having a magical recording device. That scene, he thought, would be the ultimate cure for depression. Alia, still smarting from their previous unpleasant conversation, glared at Kyle. Seeing his amusement, she snapped, "You find that funny? My father and brother's way of speaking is perfectly fine. Like father, like son, I suppose," Kyle chuckled. "But as charming as my speech may be, it can't compare to my dear little sisters." Mir was bewildered. The protagonists, who were supposed to be engaged in a love-hate relationship, weren't even remotely affectionate. They were outright enemies. At this point, the story wasn't just deviating from the original, it was completely obliterating it. But it didn't matter, as long as everyone was happy. And they would be, wouldn't they? Tears welled in Mir's eyes as he looked at Hume, dressed so elegantly for the first time in years. He had told Hume countless times not to wear only black, to try other colors, to try different hairstyles besides a ponytail. He'd said it over and over again. He loved Hume no matter what, but now, Hume was breathtakingly beautiful. "Isn't it a bit much?" "Not at all," Hume replied, pulling Mir into a hug. Their unabashed display of affection was endearing. Chrysis stood up. "I hear you're going to the dress shop. Take this." He handed Mir a small token. "It's the Chrysis family purchasing voucher. With this, you could buy an island in the East. Even if you rip out the shop's pillars, it won't matter." Such extravagant generosity made Mir break out in a cold sweat. Later, when they arrived at the dress shop, the head designer rushed out to greet them. Mir remembered a time when they could only afford to window shop at restaurants, never actually buying anything. And now this incredible power. No wonder it captivated so many. Their purpose was to find dresses for the upcoming ball. They took turns getting measured, eventually collapsing onto the sofa sofa in exhaustion. The designer, Katrin, bustled over with a stack of sample books, describing the various gowns. But Mir had two specific requests. First, Alia was too young for a corset, so he wanted a dress she could wear comfortably without one. Second, he didn't want a dress for himself. He wanted a more practical uniform. Katrin was taken aback. No young lady had ever attended the snowflake ball in anything but a gown. But my dear, Mir understood Katrin's concerns. Before becoming Chris's daughter, he had agonized over it countless times. Becoming the sword that protected his sister had been his dream for 18 years. As a lady-in-waiting, would he no longer be able to wield a sword, instead becoming a delicate flower in a greenhouse? But Chris's answer was this: whether you are the Casdal Street urchin or the mercenary king, Sword Saint Mir, no matter your identity, I have the confidence to embrace it all. Her requirement for her daughter was simple. Whatever you want to do, do it. She wanted her daughter to be free. This strengthened Mir's resolve. He had seen the world. He didn't intend to compromise. But Madame Caitlin was deeply worried. She feared that if the precedent of not wearing a dress was broken, Mir would be seen as an oddity and subjected to gossip. But Hume had come prepared. He pulled out design sketches and explained his idea. With just a few special embellishments on the dress, a unique and captivating atmosphere could be created. While making uniforms fashionable wasn't easy, the key to leading trends in high society was generating buzz and showcasing individuality. Madame Caitlin, being a renowned designer, immediately recognized the business opportunity. With a few adjustments, making the embellishments more suitable for dresses, it was sure to spark imitation among the Empire's young ladies. And this was precisely Mir's ultimate goal, to guide the Empire's fashion trends. He couldn't allow his precious sister to suffer the humiliation Hume had endured in the original story. The two hit it off instantly. Caitlin excitedly gasped at Miss Hunt. "Miss, would you consider collaborating with me on this design?" Excellent. The fish had taken the bait. But such a dazzling older sister made Alia feel insecure. When her sister's world no longer revolved solely around her, would she still love her? So, in the carriage on the way home, Alia casually inquired, "Sister, when did you start getting into fashion? You even drew design sketches." Hume felt a pang of guilt. He couldn't very well say they were from trends in his past life. Seeing his hesitation, Alia asked, "Is there anything else you want to ask me?" Alia nervously fidgeted with her hands. Finally, she voiced her concerns. "Can I ask you 3 questions?" Hume smiled indulgently. "Of course. I heard from the Duke's family physician that I'm part elf. Did you know about this already, sister?" Mir leaned down and gently took her sister's hand. "No, I only found out recently. After I reached the Sword Saint realm, I noticed that Alia's aura was different from ordinary people. And as the daughter of the Elf King, her aura is even more extraordinary. At first, I didn't think much of it. But after I regained my past life memories, I suddenly realized that it was the aura of an elf. So, you're Sword Saint, right? And the mercenary king, Mir? Miss Beaufulovit. So, her sister had known all along. Alia confessed that she indeed knew about her sister's mercenary identity and that she was Sword Saint Mir. 2 years ago, when Mir had been bitten by a venomous snake and fallen unconscious, she had accidentally seen a commission slip with Mir's name on it. But her sister hadn't wanted her to know, so she had kept it a secret. Now, there's one last question. She took her sister's hand and held it tightly. "Do you still love me?" The setting sun cast a warm glow on the two of them. Hume looked at her sister in disbelief, his heart aching with an almost unbearable weight. Why would she ask such a question? He held his sister tightly in his arms, just as he had once answered Alia, "I will always love you." For his sister was the beginning and the end of his world. He had long been willing to offer his life, his very being, to her. He wanted to keep his sister safe in his hands forever, the foundation upon which his previous life had been built. To start a fashion business, he needed sponsorships and the influence of socialites for advertising. The best spokesperson and investor were his Duke father and brother. If they wore his designs on the day of the ball, it would undoubtedly generate buzz. Coupled with his business acumen from his mercenary days, Mir was confident he could build a successful enterprise. Chrysis readily agreed to the investment, but wanted him to be a free model. Chrysis made a request. "You have to call me father from now on." Mir was taken aback. He wasn't used to such intimacy. Although he acknowledged Chrysis as his father in his heart, 18 years of estrangement made the thought of calling him father bring him out in a cold sweat. Finally, after much hesitation, he lowered his head and murmured, "Father." Chrysis chuckled and patted Mir's head. "That's enough. There's no rush. I'll wait. Mir silently picked up the design plans from the table. He had always thought his father was strange, but he was wrong. His father was actually a very gentle man. The demonic duke, single for 18 years, suddenly had two beautiful adopted daughters, causing a sensation throughout the empire. However, everyone had heard that the two sisters were previously low-born commoners. Therefore, all the nobles of the empire anticipated their debut at the ball. They all wanted a glimpse of the two. But among them, naturally, there were those with malicious intentions, eager to see the sisters make fools of themselves. In the original story, it was at this ball that Hume was mocked and ostracized by the aristocratic social circle. This ultimately led to her tragic fate. Therefore, Mir was extremely cautious about the sisters' first public appearance. The day of the debut finally arrived. Madame Caitlin, looking at the meticulously dressed Mir, couldn't help but exclaim, "The star of tonight's social debut will undoubtedly be Miss Mir." The fitted uniform perfectly showcased Mir's delicate figure. Chrysis also couldn't help but praise her beauty. Truly stunning. But he suggested she change. He was afraid his precious daughter would attract unwanted attention from other men. Even Kyle frowned. Very handsome, but this outfit is too daring. He agreed with his father. Mir, seeing their earnest concern, hesitated about changing. Just then, Alia's indignant voice rang out from behind. "No changing. Sister, don't listen to their nonsense." Mir turned to look at her sister, and her eyes widened. White roses adorned Alia's pale pink hair. A snow-white gown, complemented by delicate silver chains, made her skin appear even more porcelain-like. Alia's small face held a playful smile as she clung to Mir, soft and pliant. "Don't listen to those two. Sister looks absolutely dreamy today. Miasmida tendali." To him, no one could be more beautiful than his sister. As evening fell, the palace ballroom was ablaze with light. Nobles gathered in small groups, whispering amongst themselves about the two soon-to-arrive daughters of the duke. Most were anticipating the country bumpkin's embarrassment. With the attendant's announcement, the ballroom fell silent, and most of them were looking forward to seeing the two country girls make fools of themselves. As the attendant announced their arrival, the ballroom fell into an expectant hush. First to enter the ballroom were Alia and Kyle. The girl's delicate white wrist rested gracefully in the crook of the young man's arm. A slender silver chain, shimmering like flowing water, adorned her wrist. Beautiful as a spring sprite, she made the onlookers momentarily forget to breathe. But with the appearance of Hume and Chrysis, a gasp rippled through the crowd, for no one had ever seen a noble woman attend a royal ball in uniform. Moreover, the almost austere uniform, paired with a restrictive black corset, created an unexpectedly alluring effect. Several noble young men were momentarily captivated, sparking jealousy amongst the young ladies present. They cast sharp, disapproving glances towards Mir. Chrysis had intended to stay by her daughter's side. However, the emperor summoned the duke. He had no choice but to leave temporarily. But before departing, he told Mir, "If you encounter any trouble, invoke Chrysis's name. If necessary, draw your sword." Glancing at the accessory at his waist, Hume smiled wryly. Weapons were generally forbidden in the royal ballroom, but the influential Chrysis family was clearly an exception. After Chrysis's departure, the noble youths, previously too intimidated to approach, swarmed them, vying to inquire about their attire. Ka was about to unleash his anger, but Mir stopped him with a look. This was precisely the effect Mir had intended. He had purposely dressed Kyle in the clothes he and Madame Caitlin had designed to generate buzz and boost sales after the ball. He planned to make a hefty profit from the self-important nobles, enough to secure a comfortable future for himself and his sister. Although Kyle was reluctant, in exchange for the opportunity to spar with Mir, he readily mingled with the noble youths, promoting their designs. Alia longed to stay by Mir's side, but from the moment they arrived, she had noticed several women whispering and pointing at her sibling. She tightened her grip on Mir's hand, silently vowing to make the entire social elite kneel before her sibling and bow in submission. After Alia moved away, Hume was just about to find something to occupy himself when several noble women approached him, their words dripping with feigned politeness. "You are the Chrysis daughter, aren't you? Your attire is quite unique. It's the first time we've seen a noble woman who carries a sword. Your hands are so rough. Perhaps we could recommend a few hand creams." The villain is determined to spoil the heroine, but she cherishes him deeply. 3 male leads are vying for her affection. Even the insignificant female side characters are desperately seeking attention. But there are a few audacious, noble women who dare to openly insult her at the royal ball. Due to years of sword training, Mir's hands were covered in crisscrossing scars. These became the target of the noble women's mockery. Hume's expression remained impassive. He didn't find a woman wielding a sword in this patriarchal society to be a laughing matter. Unbeknownst to them, countless female knights had already been ennobled and awarded titles. Furthermore, the Chrysis family, as founding members of the empire, had always defended it with their swords. And as a member of the Chrysis family, he wouldn't tolerate being judged by these women. The noble women were rendered speechless. The haughty young woman at the front tried to retort, but was cut off by another woman's voice. "That's enough, Lady Ilum." Leverlin, dressed in crimson, approached. "This is Lady Chrysis's debut. Instead of supporting her, you're bullying her? Do you truly wish to incur the wrath of the Chrysis family by provoking their daughter?" Leverlin, the undisputed queen of society, silenced them with a few well-chosen words. The young nobles who had just been Sobu Fu Cheat, unconvinced/dissatisfied, now bowed and apologized to Hume. But Hume, nervously, dared not look at Leverlin. He was terrified of being recognized as Mir. But Leverlin, holding a fan to her face, looked shy. "Don't misunderstand. I'm not here to help you. But Miss Chrysis, haven't we met somewhere before?" The woman's gaze was intensely passionate. Mir shuddered. He never would have imagined that the person whose image he'd plastered across newspapers, the beloved he'd searched the world for, would turn out to be Lady Chrysis. Thankfully, at that moment, the emperor entered with the crown prince, breaking the awkward tension. The nobles bowed in unison. Emperor Helios sat upon his elevated throne and gestured for the banquet to continue. Hume was surprised. The novel described the emperor as being 50 years old, but he looked much younger. The emperor noticed Mir's gaze and winked playfully. Then he waved enthusiastically. Mir broke out in a cold sweat, completely baffled by the emperor's behavior. Just then, he noticed the crown prince beside the emperor. His eyes widened. Wasn't that Kyle? Although his hair color was different, he couldn't be mistaken. Kyle, too, looked surprised, his gaze meeting Hume's. Their eyes locked, and Hume froze. Crown Prince Diego Kyle was the son of the previous empress. He had been named Crown Prince at birth, but when he was 5, the current empress gave birth to the second prince. To ensure her own son inherited the throne, she had constantly plotted against the crown prince. No wonder Kyle had seemed like a prickly hedgehog when they first met, distrustful of everyone. But the most crucial point was that, in the original story, Kyle was supposed to be one of Alia's 4 potential suitors. And Alia's connection with him was supposed to begin with an assassination attempt, where Alia would save the unconscious crown prince. Now, everything was ruined. He had single-handedly destroyed his sister's chance at happiness. He crushed the wine glass in his hand, determined to slip away before Kyle recognized him. But he bumped headfirst into someone's chest. Looking up, he saw Reinhard Einhold looking at him with concern. Before Reinhard could speak, Hume fled the ballroom. Reinhard stared after him, dumbfounded. Hume was near a breakdown. He'd already encountered 2 of the 4 male leads. At this rate, he was bound to meet them all. Shaken, he paced the corridor, determined not to go back inside. That way, he wouldn't run into anyone else. Suddenly, a voice spoke from above. "Aren't you bored, all alone?" A faint scent of lilies drifted down. Hume looked up and saw Al, dressed in his snow-white priestly robes. "It's been a while, Mir. Or should I say, Miss Chrysis?" Mir's heart lurched. He had never revealed his true face to anyone while working as the mercenary Mir. His sister's safety depended on it. Yet this man had not only recognized him instantly, but also correctly identified him as the daughter of Duke Chrysis. "I'll smile gently. Don't worry. I'll keep your secret. After all, we're friends. Friends trust each other." Al reached out and caressed Mir's cheek with a look of infatuation. Mir slapped his hand away. "This has nothing to do with friendship." Al grasped Mir's hands tightly, pleading pathetically. "What must I do to earn your trust? If you'll only believe me, I'll do anything you ask." Mir was silent for a moment. "Then can you swear a sun oath?" Now, his identity as Mir, the one who commands troops, couldn't be revealed. Though it would surely be discovered in the future, at least for now, he didn't want to bring trouble to the Chrysis family. The man continued to smile. The ancient oath slowly left his lips. "Under the witness of the sun god, if I betray Kiyu, Mir is willing to be consumed by flames." Al reverently placed a light kiss on the back of Mir's hand. The oath was sealed. Mir stared at the man in shock, jerking his hand away. He thought Al must be mad. The sun oath was a divine contract, an unbreakable vow made under the watchful eye of the sun god. Breaking it meant instant death. It was a life-or-death pledge. As the high priest, Al couldn't possibly be unaware of this. Mir didn't understand. What was it that Al desired so much that he was willing to stake his life on it? A tinge of bitterness colored the man's smile. Because in just a few months apart, I found that Mir has many more people he cares for. Can I become one of them? I only ask that you might also come to care for me. The light in AL's eyes coalesced into a galaxy. A strange feeling, a disquieting familiarity, washed over Mir. AL's gaze always reminded him of another child, one with the same intense eyes. Before Al could receive Mir's answer, Alia's voice drifted from nearby. The blessing ceremony for her and her sister's debut was about to begin. Though he desperately craved Mir's response, Al gave a faint smile. Then, we'll talk later. The bitterness in that smile was so profound that it left Mir deeply puzzled. Alia, clutching her skirts, hurried over, breaking his train of thought. The two rushed back to the ballroom. The priest who was to perform their blessing had been waiting for some time. They stepped forward to receive the blessing, but the priest stared at Mir in astonishment. Your Mir? Both of you are quite stunning. It's truly a pleasure to meet you. I heard you somehow managed to turn that love-crazed tyrant into a sugar-dusted macaron. I was so looking forward to meeting you. Alia quietly asked her sister if she knew this man, but Mir, had never seen him before and had no idea who he was talking about. The man's expression suddenly turned anxious. Oh dear, that brat has quite the temper. If I get any closer, I might lose my head. Mir followed his gaze and saw Al smiling innocently. The man couldn't help but shudder, marveling at Al's dual personality. Alia's eyes narrowed. High Priest, aren't you going to give a blessing? Finally snapping back to reality, the man quickly began to chant the blessing for the two sisters. A soft luminescence enveloped the two sisters, and the blessing ceremony was finally completed, albeit with a few unexpected turns. As he left, the man whispered to Mir, I'm Julian from the Temple of the Sun God. If you ever need help, don't hesitate to contact me. After this little interlude, Alia, now quite worried that her sister might be swept off her feet, wanted to invite her for a dance as the music began. However, a throng of men suddenly swarmed around her, vying for the chance to dance with her. Mir, was pleased to see her sister so popular. She turned and found an empty corner, hoping for a moment of peace. However, two male voices spoke simultaneously from behind her. May I have this dance? Mir turned around, and her eyes widened in shock. She couldn't understand why Reinhard and Diego were both asking her to dance. The entire ballroom erupted in murmurs. Mir broke out in a cold sweat. Reinhard, the captain of the Royal Knights, with his white hair and golden eyes, and Diego, the current crown prince, with his golden hair and blue eyes. Two strikingly prominent figures. It couldn't be because she was a Chrysis maid. She wondered if they had recognized her as Mir, the mercenary. A crowd of onlookers buzzed with gossip behind him. No matter whom he chose, a sensational scandal would erupt. Just as he was caught in this dilemma, a voice called out from behind the pair. If there's still time, I'd like to cut in as well. My lady, would you grant me this dance? Three men, inviting one woman to dance. Mir instantly became the center of attention. Reinhard recognized him and questioned what he was doing. Al smiled, gesturing to his rank. Mir frowned, deeply troubled. He understood why Reinhard's appearance at the ball had shocked Lady Chrysis. Refusing all three of them in front of everyone would undoubtedly brand her as unreasonable. Resigned, she placed her hand in Al's. The man beamed like a child given a sweet. Bowing, apologized to the other two, promising to request a dance from them another time. Diego shrugged, trying his best to appear unconcerned. Reinhard, however, looked utterly dejected, like an abandoned puppy. Al and then made their way to the center of the dance floor. Al hadn't expected Mir to choose him. Me of us blunt. Dancing with you minimizes the gossip. She also had questions for him. She wanted to know why Al was at the ball, and when he had realized she was the Chrysis daughter. Al's smile was bittersweet, though he'd long known the answer. Hearing it from her still caused a pang in his heart. He'd suspected her identity years ago. They'd even discussed it during their past dealings. 18 years ago, the Chrysis Duke had searched for a woman and a child. Gossip mongers speculated they were his mistress and daughter, but few in the Empire knew that only the Chrysis family possessed crimson eyes, and every generation of the Chrysis dukes had remarkable talent. The mention of talent made Hume contemplative. The duke had indeed said he was looking for her. The butler, Taylor, had also mentioned her eyes when they first met. The villainess's backstory wasn't supposed to be important to the plot, but now she was deeply puzzled. How was she born? Don't worry, Al murmured, drawing closer. He tightened his grip on her hand. After a graceful twirl, he pulled her closer, his low voice a soft reassurance in her ear. I won't tell anyone, and I'm glad you're the Chrysis daughter. Hume looked at Al, bewildered. Why? Because only then can I fully appreciate the true face beneath your mask. He held her close, years of longing expressed only in this veiled confession. Al had another reason for attending the ball. He needed to warn Mir. The Atara kingdom would soon send an envoy to the Empire. There's bound to be a lunatic who'll immediately latch onto you. Don't hesitate to get rid of him if he bothers you. Don't worry about diplomatic repercussions. The Chrysis Duke will handle the aftermath. I'll help too. Hume was taken aback. Who was he talking about? Al apologized, unable to reveal more. In the original story, something major did happen with the Atara envoy. Hume decided to trust him. Al gently kissed the back of her hand. Thank you for the dance. Don't be surprised if I look different when we next meet. My feelings for you will never change. His words startled Mir. What did he mean? Then she noticed it, a strand of his hair, a rare, celestial blue. Only one person in the world had that hair color. Mir's heart pounded, but when she looked for him, he was gone. A terrifying suspicion bloomed in her mind. Could it be the high priest? Since the royal banquet had ended, the clothing Hume had designed sold out completely in just 2 days. And he, who had been penniless, became a multi-millionaire overnight. Hume was quite satisfied with this outcome, because with this money, he could ensure his sister Alia would be well provided for the rest of her life. But one thing continued to disturb Hume's peace: to earn money for his sister's medicine. For years, he had worked as a mercenary, making deals with a certain priest. However, he'd only recently discovered that the man had been hiding his true appearance. He wanted to know who the man truly was and why he had repeatedly and deliberately approached him. To this end, he specifically invited Julian, the priest he had met at the banquet. Julian was overjoyed to receive Mir's invitation, effusively expressing his admiration. But Alia, fiercely possessive of her sister, narrowed her eyes, a stony aura of hostility emanating from her. She didn't like how her sister's gaze lingered on others. And Kyle, who normally clashed with Alia, found himself unexpectedly united with her in their shared disapproval, both glaring at the man showering Mir with such fervent attention. Hume, breaking out in a cold sweat under their intense stares, had another reason for inviting Julian to the Duke's manor. His nighttime intrusion into the manor to save his sister had caused quite a stir. As a result, the Chrysis family servants all knew his identity as the mercenary king, Hume, but this identity had made him too many enemies. For the safety of his sister and the Duke's household, he wanted Julian to swear the unbreakable sun oath of secrecy. Julian puffed out his chest, proud to be of service to Mir. Seeing this, Alia, fuming, covered her face with her hands and unceremoniously tried to order Julian to leave. Left with no other choice, Hume asked Julian to join him in the back garden, personally serving him tea and apologizing for his sister's rudeness. With a subtle smile, Julian urged Hume to speak frankly. He didn't believe Mir had offered him tea for such a trivial reason. Hume didn't beat around the bush. I do have something else to ask you. Do you know the high priest, Al, of the Temple of the Sun God? What kind of person is he? Julian choked on his tea, spraying it everywhere. He couldn't believe that Al had been pining over his first love for nearly 10 years, and the girl didn't even know who he was. He stammered, unsure how to explain, finally managing to tell Mir. Al joined the temple before me. He's an old friend, but Mir wanted to know what kind of person Al was. She didn't understand why, at the royal banquet, Al would swear the life-threatening sun oath just to gain her trust. Could the sun oath be fake? Julian was dumbfounded. How little trust did Mir have in Al to even consider such a thing? To salvage his idiot friend's image in the eyes of his beloved, he had to lie through his teeth. Al is absolutely a kind and selfless person. He's not greedy, manipulative, or malicious. He possesses the same gentle character as the sun god Ra. Hume was speechless. This so-called gentle servant of the gods was rumored to be incredibly brutal. It was almost an insult, but the sun oath couldn't be fake. That meant Al was indeed trustworthy. Then Julian leaned in conspiratorially. By the way, Miss Muir, there's someone in our temple who's been deeply infatuated with you for quite some time. But he's too afraid to meet you. He's practically lovesick at this point. And this dog belongs to the highest authority in our temple. If you have the time, would you care to visit our temple?